Thank you. We're back on Due Process. I'm Henry Baskin, your host for this edition of Due Process. We're going to talk about your environment, our environment. Every day we are inundated by attacks on the air that we breathe and the water that we drink. And you know, we talk about black mold and things such as that, asbestos, and now lately anthrax. We're not going to talk about that, but we've invited, as we usually do, 4 experts down here on Due Process to talk about it. So on my far right, we have an environmental scientist. I'd like to welcome you to Due Process, Connie Morbach. What are your degrees in this field?
My degree is in hazardous materials management. I do indoor air quality evaluations.
So you're one of the hazmat people that we've talked about or read about on the news, right?
Yes, I've suited up in moon suits.
Michael Shee, might tell us something about yourself, what firm you're with and what area of law you practice in.
I'm with the law firm of Plunkett & Cooney. I do primarily defense work. I do primarily third-party defense work as we relate to these particular issues.
What is third party?
Third party would be if a party, an injured party, were to bring a case against someone. That party would then submit the claim or the lawsuit to their insurance company. Then I would come in and I would defend the insured.
So you would defend the insured?
Correct.
Okay, so there are people who sue, people such as the clients that you have. On my left is Joe Robin Davis. Welcome to Due Process.
Thank you.
You are a plaintiff's lawyer, is that correct?
I'm a plaintiff's lawyer. I
And
do first-party property insurance work for the most part, representing homeowners, business owners.
And most often come up against defense lawyers such as our guest here.
Yes.
Okay. Jennifer Greco, tell us about your firm and
Our
what
firm
you do.
is Summer Schwartz, Silver & Schwartz. It's a 75-attorney plaintiff litigation firm mostly. I'm in the commercial litigation department with specialty in mold litigation, representing plaintiffs in all aspects, whether it's homeowners or tenants.
Okay, let's start with mold litigation. Let's ask the scientist. First of all, is it a relatively new cause of action, suing people for harboring, growing, having mold in homes that they sell?
Well, I think the suits are probably fairly new, but mold itself is not new. Mold has always been around.
Well, why are we paying so much attention to mold these days? What are its properties and what are the things that mold can do to you?
Well, one of the reasons we're paying so much attention to it is now that we can test it and identify some of the toxins that they produce, doctors can now explain what might have been previously unexplained illnesses.
Okay, is this what we call black mold? Is it?
There's a lot of references to it as black mold. There's one particular mold that's getting a lot of publicity nowadays, and that's a Stachybotrys. There are a lot of cases throughout the country, not necessarily here in Michigan, that there have been some major verdicts on, and now you're seeing a proliferation of litigation throughout the country.
Okay, well, let me ask the plaintiff's lawyers, why would that give rise to a cause of action against someone who, for example, has a factory, an office, or sells you a home that happens to have mold in it?
Well, in Michigan, there is a Seller's Disclosure Act, and so a homeowner, when they are selling a home, is supposed to disclose any known problems that they have with the home, including water damage. And there are specific questions about basements and basement leaking and problems, environmental problems that they have with your home. And if you don't disclose a prior water problem that you have had with a home, someone else buys it, they are now buying not only a water problem, but a potential mold problem with homes that have ceiling tiles or drywall, those types of materials that mold can live on.
Okay, so this is where there's maybe a leak in a pipe that you can't see over years, and because it's collecting somewhere, eventually this bacteria will grow. Is that what you're saying?
Well, actually, I think mold, Stachybotrys, Aspergillus, some of these other molds can grow within 48 to 72 hours.
Is that right?
After a water loss?
Now, actually, on a porous material such as drywall, which has a high cellulose content, if it remains wet for 48 hours, you can get...
Okay, before we have a lot of listeners leaving to check their basements and attics, tell me how you can determine whether or not you have this condition. Any of you can answer that question.
I think as a homeowner, the first time you notice a water loss, you have a water loss, first thing you should probably do is call your insurance company.
When you say a water loss, what do you mean?
Ice damming from the snow. A lot of people had ice damming over the winter.
Right. It's where the gutters freeze over and...
And it freezes and then it defrosts, and then
Okay.
it freezes again.
So if
And the
you have
water
that-
comes through
Okay.
into the upper portions of the home.
So you should be careful about that situation.
Sure.
Okay, what else would give rise to that?
Would give
Leaky interior pipes and things.
leaky pipes. Say you have a fire and the firemen come and they put out the fire with water.
Right.
You're going to have water that may very well result in mold if it's not cleaned up and cleaned up properly.
So any collected water, any water that collects over a period of time, you better pay attention to, is what you're saying.
Or anytime you notice
Okay.
that you have water damage in your home,
Okay.
you should really call your insurance company.
Aside from mold, are there any other conditions that are inherently dangerous to inhabitants
Well, I guess
in our residence?
you can have off-gassing of certain furniture, carpeting.
You can have what?
It's called off-gassing. There's actually chemicals such as formaldehyde that'll actually emanate from new furniture that you can have in actually building
Really?
environments.
How would you be able to, as a scientist, how would you be able to, ask Dr. Science, how would you be able to determine that?
Well, symptoms usually appear. The types of symptoms are fairly nonspecific. Flu-like symptoms, rashes, headaches, nausea. One of the good identifying factors of a contaminated indoor environment is to remove the person from that environment to see if symptoms do go away. If the symptoms seem to be related to being in that particular setting, then testing might be indicated.
I thought we'd be long past the point where you could buy a couch or a chair and that would have, what you say, formaldehyde in it?
Formaldehyde or
I mean,
glue.
aren't manufacturers prohibited from using toxic materials?
Well, they should be, and they are. There are issues such as with the carpet industry, where there are carpets that do have off-gassing, and people need to be advised that this is just a process of the manufacturing process, and it's not only the manufacturers that need to be putting individuals on notice, but those who install these things or those that are selling these products, such as carpeting, which is something that I just recently learned. You need to actually air out your home. You should be aware of that potential that carpet does off-gas, but there are limits. There is an acceptable level of off-gassing. But if you are an individual that is an asthmatic, that would be something you definitely need to know about. You need to put new carpeting in your home and keep windows open so that it breathes.
Tell me some more. I mean, like frighten me some more, I mean, so that people should really be aware. This is really interesting because I would think that there'd be responsible manufacturers who would say, we're not going to have off-gas from our products. And that seems to be expressly prohibited by anything that the federal government does in its testing of products. What else can we look for?
Well, I guess with respect to off-gassing in furniture and products and carpeting products along those lines, I guess in your normal course, the product's going to off-gas, but it's going to dissipate at such a level it's not going to affect the general public.
But some people become ill, especially people who are prone to thoracic or those kinds of problems, asthma.
I think there's a give and take in the manufacturing industry that there are acceptable levels. And so there's going to be a toxin in the furniture or a toxin in cabinets, for instance, but there are acceptable levels.
Okay, we have toxin and we have mold. What else can we find in the everyday home that we can talk about just before we go to a break?
One thing I'd like to add to that is one reason that these chemicals and toxins are problems now, and they might not have been problems 60 years ago, is that our homes are built much tighter.
Okay.
We're basically living in Ziploc bags. 60 years ago, we could get 6 air changes an hour just by normal holes in windows and doors. Now building codes allow 0.35 air changes an hour. That means every hour, only a third of the air is being exchanged in the house.
Good point. We're going to take a break on due process. When we come back, I want to talk about people who work in closed environments, such as these hermetically sealed office buildings. We'll be right back. We'll talk about that.